A millionaire CEO is challenged by a food delivery worker and falls head over heels in love. Before we dive into the story, leave a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Eliza Evans peddled as if her life depended on it, and in a way, it did. Her shift at the delivery company was almost over, but this last order was taking longer than expected. Come on, she muttered, swerving around a distracted pedestrian who was walking at a snail's pace while typing on his phone. Finally, she reached Smith & Associates. The law firm was so fancy that even the receptionist looked like she had stepped out of a French perfume commercial. As soon as the elevator doors opened, a group of lawyers rushed in, deep in conversation about an important meeting, probably something about million-dollar contracts, not about how to make ends meet at the end of the month like her. Eliza hurried in right behind them, slipping through the closing doors like a delivery ninja. Perfect, she whispered to herself. But then another man stepped in. He had a serious air, a flawless suit, and perfectly styled hair. At that exact moment, the elevator let out a loud beep, 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 beep. One of the lawyers checked the digital panel and widened his eyes. We've hit the weight limit. The group exchanged glances. One of them turned directly to Eliza. Someone needs to step out. Eliza blinked. Okay, who was the last one to get in? She looked straight at the impeccably dressed man. It was him. The man raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised at being called out so bluntly. Me? Yes. If someone has to get out, it should be the last person who got in. Basic elevator etiquette. Good point, a lawyer murmured beside him. But before the man in the suit could step out, he crossed his arms. I'm not leaving. I need to get upstairs. Eliza crossed her arms too. Great, so do I. And my delivery is just as important as your meeting. The lawyers exchanged awkward glances, unsure of what to do. Miss, please just take the next one. It's only a few minutes. A few minutes could cost me my delivery. You're serious? Yes. Why should I be the one to leave and not him? She pointed at the man in the suit again, who now had a slight smirk, as if he was actually enjoying this. Because he's William Smith, the CEO of this firm. Eliza blinked. So what? CEOs can wait too, right? Silence. Then William smiled, looking straight at her. You've got guts. I've got a delivery to make, and I have a company to run. The lawyers sighed in frustration. Finally, one of them stepped out. There. Now stop arguing. The doors closed, and the elevator started moving. Eliza glanced at William. I bet you got your CEO title by arguing with people until they gave up. And I bet you'd make a great lawyer. Eliza scoffed. Why does everyone keep saying that? On the 28th floor, the lawyers exited first, ignoring Eliza completely. William headed straight for his office, while Eliza went to drop off the order. When she checked the recipient's name, she froze. No, oh. She took a deep breath, hoping it was just a system error, but it wasn't. She knocked on the door, already preparing herself for the awkward conversation ahead. William looked up, genuinely surprised to see her. You again? Eliza forced a smile so stiff it could be considered fraudulent. Yep, life's little ironies. Here's your food, Mr. CEO, who can't wait for an elevator. She placed the bag on his desk, with just a little more force than necessary. William held back a laugh. Looks like we were meant to cross paths more than once today. Or maybe I've been cursed by the god of bad luck. He picked up the bag and studied her for a moment. You're a great speaker. Have you ever thought about doing something other than food delivery? Eliza narrowed her eyes. Why does everyone keep saying that? Because you're quick-witted, sharp, and incredibly bold. That's rare. I studied law for a bit, but I had to drop out. Why? She looked away. Personal reasons. She crossed her arms. Look, if you're about to give me some motivational speech, I'll pass. William chuckled. Not at all. He grabbed a piece of paper, scribbled something, and slid it across the desk. This is a mock case. An employee was fired without cause. How can they fight it? Eliza picked up the paper and read it. Seriously? You're testing me now? I'm curious. Eliza rolled her eyes but couldn't resist the challenge. It depends on the contract and the length of service. If the termination was without prior notice, they may be entitled to compensation according to labor law. If there's a specific clause in the contract, they could claim a breach of agreement. William watched her with a glint in his eyes. You have talent. Eliza frowned. Was that a test? It was, and you passed. She huffed. Great. Can I go now? William grabbed her insulated food bag before she could stand up. "If you want a better job than delivering food, come to my office tomorrow. Let's talk." Eliza raised an eyebrow. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance. What you do with it is up to you." Eliza took his card and left without a word. William watched her go, a curious smile on his lips. That girl wasn't ordinary, and he wanted to find out exactly what she was capable of. Eliza wasn't sure what was worse, the fact that she had been tested without warning, or the fact that somehow she had passed. After leaving the Smith & Associates building, she looked at William's card as if it were a winning lottery ticket, only instead of millions, the prize was a mysterious job working alongside a demanding CEO. She sighed. "If I keep going at this pace, I'll end up signing a contract without reading the fine print." When she got home, Mia, her roommate, was already on the couch, munching on popcorn and watching a reality show. "So, how was your battle with the lawyers?" Eliza flopped into the armchair. "I got fired, argued with the CEO, and now he's offering me a job." Mia's eyes widened. "Wait, the guy from the elevator? The one and only?" Mia blinked, then clicked her tongue. "If this were a cliché romance, you two would be married by the end of the year." Eliza grabbed a pillow and threw it at her friend. "This is real life, Mia. I just want to pay my bills." "And what are you going to do?" Eliza looked at William's card again and took a deep breath. "I think I'll go. I've got nothing to lose." Eliza took a deep breath before stepping into the building this time. No food bag, no delivery uniform, no smell of takeout. She was dressed as professionally as her budget allowed. A light blue blouse, black pants, and a pair of shoes that would probably give her blisters if she walked too much. The receptionist recognized her immediately. "You again?" Eliza smiled. No crowded elevators this time. The woman chuckled and picked up the phone. "Mr. Smith, your guest is here." After a brief pause, she nodded. "You can go up." Eliza headed straight to William's office. This time, when the elevator doors opened, no one told her to leave. When she entered, William was sitting behind his desk, as if he had already known she would come. He smiled when he saw her. "Welcome to the office, Eliza. Haven't accepted anything yet." "Then why are you here?" Eliza crossed her arms. "Curiosity." William raised an eyebrow. "Great. Then have a seat." Eliza hesitated, but eventually sat in the chair across from him. William took a file and placed it on the desk. "Here's your first challenge." Eliza picked up the document and quickly skimmed through it. "Wait, this is a real contract?" "Yes. And I want you to review it and tell me if there's anything wrong." Eliza narrowed her eyes. "This still feels like a test." William smiled. "Of course it is, but that's how you'll learn." Eliza huffed but grabbed a pen and started reading. 3 minutes later, she was already marking up several clauses. William watched, amusement hidden in his expression. "Find anything?" Eliza looked up. "If the contracting party fails to meet the deadline, the penalty fee will be determined at the contractor's discretion based on what is most convenient." She looked at William. "That basically gives the contractor the right to charge whatever they want." William nodded. "And is that legal?" Eliza gave a small smirk. "Legal? Yes. Ethical? Not at all." William let out a small chuckle. "I like the way you think." Eliza crossed her arms. "So did I pass the second test?" William stood up and extended his hand. "If you accept the job, this will be your daily routine." Eliza hesitated for a second, then she shook his hand. "I accept, but no coffee." William smiled. "We'll see." Eliza was introduced to the office as William's new assistant. The murmurs started immediately. "Is that the girl from the elevator?" "Yeah, he actually hired her. But she was a delivery girl." Eliza rolled her eyes. "Great, my nickname is already set." Aurora, William's secretary, smiled. "Don't worry, they'll forget in a few weeks. Or remember forever." Aurora laughed. "Come on, I'll show you where you'll be working." Eliza was led to a desk near William's. "Here's your space. You can start by organizing these files." Eliza looked at the stack of papers. "Is this a punishment?" "No, this is a normal day." Eliza sighed and started reading the documents. 15 minutes later, she had already found 2 serious mistakes. She picked up a pen and began marking the inconsistencies. William walked by and stopped when he saw her notes. "You've already found errors?" Eliza looked up. "If I'm going to be fired for correcting bad contracts, just let me know now." William laughed. "Relax, you're doing exactly what I expected." Eliza let out a breath of relief. "Great. Because I'm already halfway through the second contract. William watched, impressed. At this pace, you'll be giving me orders soon. Eliza smiled. Don't doubt it. She quickly realized that not everyone was happy with her presence. Edward Reynolds, a more experienced attorney, had been watching her with suspicion since she arrived. At lunchtime, he finally decided to confront her. You know you don't deserve to be here, right? Eliza raised an eyebrow. Oh, and who decides that? You? I studied for years to be here. You were delivering food last week. Eliza smiled. And yet William hired me. What does that say about you? Edward turned red. Let's see how long you last. Eliza tilted her head. If you want to bet, I'm in. At that moment, William appeared. If you're done with this ego contest, we have a client waiting. Eliza followed William, a victorious smile on her face. Edward stayed behind, clearly frustrated, but Eliza knew this was just the first of many battles in that office. She was still trying to wrap her head around the fact that, just a week ago, she was delivering food, and now she was the personal assistant to the CEO of one of the most prestigious law firms in the city. If someone had told her this would happen, she would have laughed in their face. But there she was, sitting at her new desk, reviewing contracts while receiving judgmental looks from some attorneys who were clearly unhappy with her presence. She didn't care. Well, actually, she did a little, but she would never show it. William walked past her desk with a folder in his hand. Have you finished the contracts I gave you? Eliza picked up a stack of papers and raised an eyebrow. If you want me to review them in the dark and with my eyes closed, I can pretend I have. He laughed. Take this folder. We have a meeting with an important client in 10 minutes. Eliza's eyes widened. Wait, I'm going to a meeting? William shrugged. If you want to learn, you need to see how things work in practice. She grabbed the folder, straightened her posture, and followed him down the hallway. It was funny how, even though she wasn't a lawyer, she felt like she belonged there more than some who were looking down on her. When they entered the meeting room, they found a middle-aged man in a dark suit, sitting with a serious expression. He looked at William, then at Eliza, clearly surprised. Who is this? William sat down and gestured for Eliza to do the same. My assistant, Eliza Evans. The man frowned. Assistant? I was expecting someone more experienced. Eliza smiled and crossed her arms. Funny, I was expecting more polite clients. William suppressed a laugh while the man's eyes widened. What? She opened the folder and slid a contract toward him. Let's get straight to the point. Mr. Martinez. You want to renegotiate the termination clause in your company's contract, correct? The man narrowed his eyes, clearly suspicious. Yes. Eliza gave a patient smile. The problem is, if you do it the way you suggested, you'll be opening the door for others to use the same argument against you. You don't want that, do you? The man stared at the document, his frown deepening. William crossed his arms and looked at Eliza with amusement. And what's the solution, Eliza? She picked up a pen and circled a section of the contract. Adjust this part here, ensuring that any changes to the termination clause can only apply in specific, predefined situations. This prevents loopholes. Mr. Martinez looked at William. Has she always been like this? William smiled. Since day one. The man shook his head and let out a sigh. Well, I like someone who gets straight to the point. Let's move forward with this. Eliza kept a neutral expression, but inside she wanted to celebrate. Her first meeting, and she had already solved a problem before it turned into a lawsuit. As they left the room, William looked at her approvingly. If you keep this up, you'll end up taking my job. She shrugged. Don't worry, I'll let you keep the assistant spot. He laughed. Come with me, we have something else to take care of. Eliza followed him through the hallways to a large conference room where several lawyers were engaged in a heated discussion. This won't work, one of them snapped. If we don't find a solution, our client will lose millions. Another shot back. William stepped in, and the room fell silent. You all look lost. One of the lawyers, Edward, who had already made it clear he didn't like Eliza being there, stood up with an irritated look. We have a complex case, and we're stuck. William took a folder from one of the lawyers and tossed it onto the table. Let's see if my new assistant has an idea. All eyes turned to Eliza, and she felt the weight of their expectations settle on her shoulders. She picked up the document and started reading quickly. The case involved a company trying to terminate a contract without paying the penalty fee, claiming there was a failure in the service provided. She looked up. Is there concrete proof of the failure? One of the lawyers responded, the company says there is, but the documents they provided aren't strong enough to prove it. Eliza flipped through a few more pages, then smiled. Here's your way out. Edward crossed his arms. Let's see what the delivery girl has to say. Eliza ignored his mocking tone. If the company wants to terminate the contract without paying the penalty, they need to prove there was a serious failure in the service. But in this case, since their documents aren't enough, we can argue that unilaterally canceling the contract without payment constitutes a breach of contract. William smiled. Exactly. The lawyers exchanged glances, and even Edward looked surprised. That could actually work. William looked at Eliza with a satisfied expression. Well done, Evans. Looks like you're getting the hang of this. She crossed her arms and smirked. I'm just getting started. Once everyone had left, William leaned against the table and studied her. You know you're making some people uncomfortable here, right? Eliza rolled her eyes. Oh, you noticed? I thought they were loving my presence. He chuckled. You're good, Eliza. Better than many here. But that also means some people will try to bring you down. She narrowed her eyes. Are you trying to scare me? No, I'm preparing you. She sighed. Don't worry, I've been through worse. William watched her for a moment before smiling. Good, because I have a feeling things are about to get even more interesting around here. Eliza grinned. Can't wait. She turned to leave, but William called her back. Oh, one more thing. She stopped and looked at him. What? He tossed a folder to her. Your next challenge. And this time I want you to present the solution directly to the client. Eliza looked at the folder, then back at him. You really enjoy testing me, don't you? William smiled. And you really enjoy surprising me. She held on to the folder and walked out of the room, feeling like this was just the beginning of something much bigger than she had imagined. William watched her go, a smile on his face. This is going to be fun. Eliza didn't know it yet, but she had just become a key player in that office, and some people wouldn't like it one bit. But one thing was certain. She wasn't going to give up. She never did. Eliza left William's office feeling the weight of the folder he had given her. It was a new challenge, and she knew this test wasn't just about her technical skills. It was also about how she would handle the growing tension in the office. Since she had started working there, she had noticed the suspicious glances and the whispers in the hallways. Some thought she was a joke. Others saw her as a threat. She didn't care, or at least she tried not to. She sat at her desk and opened the folder, carefully reading through the documents. The case was a contractual dispute between a company and a supplier claiming breach of contract. The company wanted to terminate the agreement without paying compensation, arguing that the supplier had missed deadlines. The problem: the contract wasn't as clear as it should have been, leaving loopholes that could favor either side. Eliza took a deep breath. This wasn't going to be easy. She had to prepare her argument and present it directly to the client. That meant there was no room for mistakes. If she failed, she would be giving her critics exactly what they wanted, an excuse to say she didn't belong there. She spent the entire morning analyzing the contract, taking notes and cross-referencing information with other documents attached to the case. It wasn't just about understanding the law, it was about understanding how the words on paper could be used in favor of the client. Before she knew it, it was already lunchtime. She got up and headed to the office cafeteria, where a few tables were occupied by lawyers engaged in lively conversations. As soon as she walked in, she noticed the looks. Some ignored her completely, while others whispered to their colleagues. She grabbed a coffee and a sandwich, trying to ignore the murmurs around her, but then Edward's voice, clearly not a fan of hers, echoed through the room. So, is the office's rising star already preparing for her big disaster? Eliza took a deep breath before turning to face him. Edward was sitting with two other lawyers, who chuckled quietly. If by big disaster you mean the inevitable success of my work, then yes, I am getting ready. His colleagues laughed, but Edward kept his eyes fixed on her. Let's see if William keeps protecting you after you make a major mistake. Eliza took a sip of her coffee and smiled. Funny, Edward, you seem very concerned about my career. Maybe you should focus on your own. Or are you afraid of being left behind? The laughter at his table stopped. Edward looked at her, clearly irritated, but said nothing. Eliza just smiled and walked away, feeling like she had won another small battle. Back at her desk, she spent the afternoon defining her argument. She knew she had found a strong approach to defend the client, but she needed to make sure everything was perfect. By the time she finished, it was nearly the end of the workday. She walked to William's office, knocked on the door, and stepped inside. He looked up from his computer and smiled. So, are you ready? Eliza placed the folder on his desk. Yes, and I think the client will like what I've put together. William picked up the papers and started reading. As he went through them, his smile grew. You pinpointed exactly where the weaknesses were. Strong argument. Eliza crossed her arms. So when's the meeting? William checked his watch. Tomorrow morning. I hope you're prepared. She smirked. I always am. The next morning, Eliza arrived at the office earlier than usual. She reviewed her materials one last time before heading to the conference room. William was already there, along with the client, Mr. Wallace, a middle-aged businessman with a sharp gaze. Mr. Wallace, this is Eliza Evans, my assistant. She will be presenting the case analysis. Wallace looked at her, visibly surprised. Her? Are you sure? Eliza held back a smile. She was used to this kind of reaction. I'm sure, Mr. Wallace. And by the end of this meeting, you will be too. He seemed intrigued, but nodded. Eliza opened her folder and began her presentation. She calmly explained the contract's weak points, highlighted flaws in the supplier arguments, and proposed a strategy that would put Mr. Wallace's company in a strong position without violating any clauses. When she finished, the client remained silent for a few moments, studying the papers in front of him. Finally, he smiled. Impressive. You've got talent, young lady. William smiled. Told you she was good. Eliza maintained her professional demeanor, but inside, she felt a wave of satisfaction. She knew she had done a great job. Mr. Wallace stood up and extended his hand. I'm convinced. Let's go with this strategy. Eliza shook his hand firmly. Great choice. When the meeting ended, William waited until everyone had left before turning to Eliza with a satisfied smile. You really enjoy surprising people, don't you? She shrugged. I just do my job. He looked at her for a moment, then nodded. Keep it up, Evans. Eliza walked out of the room feeling accomplished, but she knew this was only the beginning. If she really wanted to establish herself there, she would have to keep proving her worth every single day. And that's exactly what she intended to do. Let's play a little game. With those who only read the comments, type McDonald's in the comments. Only those who make it this far will understand. Now let's continue the story. Eliza left the meeting room feeling a mix of relief and excitement. The client had accepted her argument without hesitation, and William seemed pleased with her performance. But she knew that in the office, this didn't mean things would get any easier. On the contrary, Edward and the others who resented her presence were probably even more annoyed. She walked back to her desk and dropped into her chair, letting out a long sigh. Aurora, who was organizing some papers at the desk next to hers, glanced at her with an amused smile. You've got that victorious look. What happened? Eliza grinned. Let's just say another client underestimated me and walked away impressed with my work. Aurora chuckled. That's going to become a habit. Eliza raised an eyebrow. I hope so, but I get the feeling that the more I get things right, the more some people around here get uncomfortable. Aurora paused for a second and sighed. Well, you're not wrong. A lot of people think you shouldn't be here, but you know the good part? They only feel threatened because you're really good. Eliza chuckled. That's one way to look at it, but before she could continue the conversation, an email popped up on her screen. It was a meeting request for later that afternoon. The subject, team performance evaluation. Eliza frowned. Is this normal? Aurora glanced at the screen and sighed. Not exactly. Evaluations happen, but they're usually one-on-one with supervisors. A group meeting like this seems suspicious. Eliza immediately knew this wasn't just a routine evaluation. It was likely Edward or another lawyer trying to put her on the spot. William appeared out of nowhere, as if he had sensed her concern. I saw you got called into the meeting. Eliza nodded. Any idea what they're up to? William crossed his arms. I have a pretty good guess. They're trying to make it look like hiring you was a mistake. Eliza took a deep breath. And do you think they'll succeed? William smiled. No, because they still don't know who they're dealing with. Eliza smirked. I like that confidence. William handed her a file. Before the meeting, I want you to go over this. It's a case that might interest you. She took the document and started reading. It was a wrongful termination lawsuit, a case where an employee had been dismissed without cause or prior notice. But the interesting part, the company's lawyer responsible for the violation was none other than Edward Reynolds. Eliza let out a quiet laugh. Are you giving me ammunition? William raised an eyebrow. I'm just providing knowledge. What you do with it is up to you. Eliza knew exactly what she was going to do with it. The conference room was packed when Eliza walked in. Edward was seated at the front, flanked by two senior attorneys, likely there as backup. William entered right behind her, taking a seat in the corner, quietly observing. Mr. Barnes, the senior lawyer, cleared his throat and looked around the room. We're here to discuss team performance and how we can improve internal processes at the firm. Eliza knew that was just an excuse to get to her. Edward was the first to speak. I think we should talk about hiring assistants without proper credentials. Silence fell over the room. Eliza raised an eyebrow and looked straight at him. Are you talking about me, Edward? He smirked. If the shoe fits. Eliza chuckled. Interesting, because I could say the same about lawyers who lose cases due to poor argumentation. Edward frowned. What are you talking about? Eliza pulled out the document William had given her and slid it across the table. This case, your client lost because you failed to properly contest the contract termination. Edward picked up the file, his face turning red. This has nothing to do with this meeting. Eliza smiled. Oh, but it does. Because you're questioning my place here while you have a history of mistakes that cost our clients money. Mr. Barnes cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. Edward, do you have anything to say about this case? Edward swallowed hard. It was a small mistake. Eliza shrugged. Small? The client lost thousands of dollars. If it were me, I would have spotted the loophole in the contract before the deal was signed. William remained silent, but the amused glint in his eyes showed he was enjoying the moment. Mr. Barnes sighed. I think we can conclude that Miss Evans is making a valuable contribution to the firm. This meeting is adjourned. Eliza watched as Edward's expression darkened, but he had no choice but to accept it. As everyone left the room, William approached her. You played that well. Eliza smiled. You gave me the cards. He shrugged. And you knew exactly when to use them. Eliza glanced at Edward as he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I don't think he's going to give up that easily. William grinned. Even better for us. The more they try to take you down, the stronger you'll become. Eliza took a deep breath. And I do love a good challenge. She knew this battle was just beginning. But one thing was certain. She wasn't just some delivery girl. She was here to stay, and no one was going to stop her. Eliza felt that something was about to happen. Ever since she had dismantled Edward's attempt to discredit her in the meeting, the stares at the office had become even more intense. By now, she was certain that some lawyers were just waiting for the slightest mistake to use as an excuse to take her down. But if they thought she was the type to back down under pressure, they were very mistaken. She had fought for everything she had in life, and this time would be no different. That morning, as soon as she entered the office, Aurora approached her with a worried look. I just heard something strange. Eliza raised an eyebrow as she grabbed a cup of coffee. Strange how? Aurora glanced around and lowered her voice. Edward is up to something. He wants to use the next negotiation meeting with an important client to expose you. Eliza gave a small smirk. Of course he does. But what's his plan? It looks like he's planning to put you on the spot during the meeting, hoping you'll make a mistake in front of the client. Eliza took a sip of her coffee, looking completely unfazed. Then he's in for a surprise. Aurora blinked. You seem really calm. Eliza chuckled. He wants me to fail? Well, I'm going to shine. William appeared at the door holding a folder. Evans, we have a meeting in an hour. I want you to lead the contractual part. Eliza smiled. Consider it done. William looked at her for a moment, and a smile appeared on his lips. I knew I'd like having you here. An hour later, Eliza walked into the conference room where William was already seated beside the client, Mr. Harrington, the owner of a major tech company, closing a contract with a key supplier. Across the table sat the supplier's lawyers, and of course, Edward, who looked far too pleased with himself. Eliza took a seat next to William and opened her folder. Shall we begin, Mr.? Callahan looked at William, then at Eliza. She's leading the negotiation? William nodded. Trust me, she's the best person for the job. Edward smirked, clearly waiting for Eliza to make a mistake. Let's see how the firm's new rising star does. Eliza ignored his tone and looked directly at the supplier's lawyers. We've reviewed the contract and identified a few points that need to be adjusted before we proceed. She picked up one of the documents and circled a paragraph with her pen. This clause here is ambiguous and could lead to unnecessary disputes if we leave it as is. Both parties might interpret it differently if something goes wrong in the future. The supplier's lawyers exchanged glances. What do you suggest? Eliza turned the page and pointed to the revised section. We adjusted the wording to ensure that any changes to the contract scope must be formally documented and signed by both parties. This prevents disputes and ensures greater transparency. Mr. Callahan reviewed the document and nodded. That makes sense. Edward leaned back in his chair. But the supplier may want flexibility to make changes without having to formalize every detail. Eliza remained composed. That wouldn't be in our client's best interest. Too much flexibility could create loopholes for changes that weren't previously agreed upon. William crossed his arms, satisfied. Exactly, the supplier's lawyers murmured among themselves. The senior lawyer adjusted his glasses and said, "We can agree to that adjustment as long as the penalty clause is reduced by 10%. Eliza gave a controlled smile. Reducing the penalty weakens the contract for our client, but we can find a middle ground. We keep the full penalty but offer a longer grace period for adjustments, as long as they are communicated in advance." The supplier's lawyers reviewed the proposal, and after a few moments, they nodded. "That seems fair." Mr. Callahan smiled. "I like this approach. Let's move forward with it." Edward's expression darkened. Eliza looked at him and gave a small wink. "Anything else you'd like to add, Edward?" He let out a frustrated sigh. "Nothing." William smiled. "Then we have a deal." As the meeting ended, Edward left the room without saying a word. William turned to Eliza and crossed his arms. "I told you I'd like having you here." Eliza smiled. "And I told you I was going to shine." William laughed. "This war between you two is just beginning." Eliza gathered her papers and walked out of the room, certain that she was bothering the right people, and that only motivated her even more. She knew the battle was far from over, but if Edward and the others wanted to play a game, then a game they would have, and she was more than ready to win. Eliza left the meeting feeling like she had just won another battle. The furious look on Edward's face was proof that he had tried to bring her down and failed miserably. But if life had taught her anything, it was that people like him never gave up after the first attempt. He would come back with something more elaborate, and she needed to be ready. As soon as she returned to her desk, Aurora approached with a worried expression. "Eliza, the first heard a rumor, and I think you should know about it." Eliza crossed her arms. "The kind that says new girl doesn't belong here, or the kind that says let's try to ruin her?" Aurora sighed. "The second one. It looks like Edward and a few other lawyers are setting up a plan to put you in a tough spot. They're talking about a new contract and trying to sneak in a mistake so you'll sign it without noticing." Eliza raised an eyebrow. "Do they really think I'm that careless? They're counting on your confidence. Edward wants you to feel secure enough not to double-check a tiny detail, and by the time you realize it, it'll be too late." Eliza let out a quiet laugh. "So they want me to fall because of my own arrogance?" Aurora nodded. "Basically." Eliza gave a calculated smile. "Perfect, because I already know exactly how to fight back." Aurora blinked, surprised. "You already have a plan?" "Not yet, but it's only a matter of time. If they think they're going to catch me off guard, they're going to regret it." Aurora gave a half smile. "I like your fighting spirit, and I like watching fools fall into their own traps." Eliza spent the rest of the morning working, but she already knew she had to stay one step ahead. If Edward wanted her to sign a document with an error, the best move was to play along. She would wait for the right moment to turn the tables. Later that afternoon, William called her into his office. "You know Edward and his group are up to something, right?" Eliza dropped into the chair and crossed her legs. "Know about it? I'm already waiting for their move." William smirked. "And what's your plan?" "Let them dangle the bait. And when they think they've caught me, I'll make sure they hang themselves with their own rope." William chuckled. "Should I start worrying about you?" Eliza shrugged. "Only if you're on the wrong side of the story." He was silent for a moment, then nodded. "Then do what you need to do. But make sure that when the dust settles, Edward has no choice but to accept that you're here to stay." Eliza stood up and gave a small smirk. "I always do." The next morning, the office felt strangely quiet. It was as if everyone was waiting for something to happen. Eliza noticed it the moment she walked in but pretended not to. She grabbed a coffee and went to her desk, as if it were just another ordinary day. Then Aurora appeared with an envelope in her hands. "Edward just sent this to you." Eliza took the envelope without hurry, opened it, and pulled out the papers. She scanned through them quickly, and by the second paragraph, she had already spotted the trap. They had manipulated a clause in the contract so that if signed as it was, the client would unknowingly waive their right to financial compensation. The problem was that the change was subtle, almost imperceptible to someone who wasn't paying close attention. They wanted her to sign without noticing, and when the mistake was exposed, she would be held responsible. Eliza let out a deep sigh. They could at least be more creative. Aurora widened her eyes. You spotted the mistake that fast? Easily. But I'm going to pretend I didn't. Let's see how far they take this. Aurora grinned. So the game has officially started? It has. Eliza grabbed a pen, pretended to review the contract, and then scribbled a comment next to the altered clause. Obvious mistake. Clause 5.4 contradicts Article 12.2. Please review before sending for final signature. She folded the paper and handed it back to Aurora. Give this back to Edward. Aurora laughed. I'd love to see his face when he reads this. If you have a hidden camera, let me know. Aurora left to deliver the document, and Eliza got back to work. Less than 20 minutes later, Edward appeared beside her desk. Can we talk? Eliza looked up at him with a falsely innocent smile. Something wrong, Edward? He pressed his lips together. You made a note on the contract. I think you misunderstood something. Eliza blinked. Misunderstood? What do you mean? Edward took a deep breath, trying to keep his patience. The clause you pointed out isn't wrong. Eliza picked up the papers again, pretending to be confused. Oh wow, you're right. I read it too quickly. But you know what's funny? I almost signed without noticing. Someone distracted could have easily missed it. Imagine that. Edward crossed his arms. Do you think I'm trying to trick you? Eliza smiled. Me? Of course not. But look, I think this clause could be reworded to avoid any misunderstandings. What do you think? He was silent for a moment. Then he picked up the papers and walked away without saying a word. Aurora showed up right after, trying not to laugh. Edward walked out of here looking like he swallowed a lemon. Eliza smiled. He'll think twice before trying something like that again. Aurora sighed. You're handling this better than I expected. And honestly, I'm really enjoying watching it. Eliza picked up a new contract and started reviewing it. Stick around because I'm sure there will be plenty more to watch. And she was right. Edward might have failed this time, but he would definitely try again. The only difference was that now he knew Eliza wasn't someone easy to beat. She was a worthy opponent, and if he wanted to play, she would play, and she would win. Eliza knew Edward wouldn't give up so easily. After the embarrassment in the meeting and his failed attempt to get her to sign a flawed contract, he would definitely come up with something new. She just didn't know what. The morning at the office was busy. William was out for an external meeting, which meant she'd have some peace, or so she thought. As she sat down to review a new contract, Aurora appeared beside her with a worried look. You won't believe what I just heard. Eliza sighed and set her pen down on the table. Let me guess, Edward. Yes, he's telling everyone you made a mistake in Mr. Callahan's case. Eliza narrowed her eyes. What do you mean? Aurora pulled up a chair and leaned in to whisper. He's spreading the word that your contract clause left the client vulnerable to a legal dispute. He says that if the rival company wants to, they can use it against Mr. Callahan and demand a renegotiation. Eliza chuckled. Interesting, because if he had found an actual issue, he would have gone straight to William instead of spreading rumors. Aurora smiled. I know, but that doesn't mean he won't try something more serious. He wants to force you to defend yourself in front of everyone. Eliza crossed her arms. Great. Then he's in for another surprise. A few minutes later, an email was sent to all the lawyers in the office. Callahan contract review, emergency meeting at 3:00 p.m. Attendance required for Eliza Evans. Aurora's eyes widened. He wants to put you on the spot in front of everyone. Eliza took a sip of her coffee, calm as ever. Then let's see him try. At 3:00 p.m., Eliza walked into the conference room. As expected, the room was full. William had returned from his meeting and was sitting calmly, while Edward stood by Barnes and other lawyers who seemed eager for the show. Eliza grabbed a notepad and sat down without showing any nerves. Barnes cleared his throat. We're here to discuss a concern raised by Mr. Edward Reynolds regarding the review of Mr. Callahan's contract. William remained neutral. And what exactly is the concern? Edward smiled smugly. The clause proposed by Evans allows for an interpretative loophole that could be used against our client if the other party challenges it. This puts Mr. Callahan at risk. Eliza feigned surprise and picked up a document. Oh wow, that sounds terrible. Now tell me, Edward, what exactly is this so-called loophole? Edward grabbed a paper and pointed to a paragraph. Here, the fact that contractual changes need to be formally documented. If the other party refuses to put them in writing but makes informal changes, they could argue they weren't bound to comply. Eliza held back a smile. You're right. They could argue that. Edward crossed his arms, feeling victorious. So you admit you made a mistake? Eliza gave a calm smile. No, I admit that you didn't read the entire contract. The room went silent. Eliza slid another document across the table. If you had read the section on contract amendments, you would have seen there's a clause requiring all changes to be formally documented to be legally valid. This means the other party can't refuse to register the changes without invalidating the contract itself. Edward's face froze. William finally spoke. So the loophole he found doesn't actually exist? Eliza shrugged. Only in his imagination. The room buzzed with murmurs. Barnes grabbed the documents, read through them quickly, and sighed. Well then, there's nothing to discuss. The contract was drafted correctly. Edward clenched his fists and stood up. That doesn't mean there wasn't carelessness. Eliza smiled. You're right, because you clearly forgot to read the whole document. William couldn't hold back his laughter. Barnes slammed the folder onto the table. Meeting adjourned. Edward stormed out while Eliza calmly gathered her papers. William walked over with a smile on his face. You really enjoy making them furious, don't you? Eliza blinked. Me? No way. William shook his head. If you keep this up, they're going to start having nightmares about you. She laughed. I hope so. After the meeting, Eliza returned to her desk with Aurora by her side. He's completely humiliated, Aurora whispered. But Eliza, this isn't over. Eliza nodded. I know. He's losing the game, and he's going to try something riskier. Aurora glanced around as if expecting Edward to appear at any moment. Just be careful. Always. A few hours later, Eliza received a new email. This time, it was about a real and urgent case, Evans. I need you to review this contract by tomorrow morning. I trust your work. William, she opened the attachment and started reading, but as she went through the clauses, her expression grew serious. Something was wrong. She read it again and again. Her stomach twisted. There was a mistake. But this time, it wasn't one of Edward's tricks. It was a real mistake. If it went unnoticed, it could cost the client millions. She grabbed a pen and started marking the text. There was work to do, and this time the stakes were higher than ever. Eliza read and reread the contract countless times. The mistake was right there, staring back at her, but it wasn't easy to fix. The clause was ambiguous, and depending on how it was interpreted, it could lead to huge financial losses for the client. She took a deep breath, massaging her temples. This wasn't one of Edward's traps. It was real, and worse, William had said he trusted her. She couldn't afford to make a mistake. The office was already emptier when William appeared by her desk, watching her in silence for a few seconds. Still here? Eliza didn't take her eyes off the paper. This is serious, William. He pulled up a chair and sat next to her, picking up one of the documents. Show me. Eliza slid the contract over and pointed at the problematic clause. Here, depending on how this is interpreted, our client could be forced to pay massive settlements without even being at fault. William read the clause carefully, his brow furrowing. Damn, this is worse than I thought. She nodded. What if we just remove this part? He shook his head. We can't. The client demanded this clause. They want protection against unexpected contract terminations. If we take it out, they won't accept the deal. Eliza leaned back in her chair, thinking. Then we need to rewrite it. But it has to be something that keeps them protected while making sure there are no loopholes for disputes. William studied her for a moment, a subtle smile on his lips. You take this very seriously. She rolled her eyes. Isn't that the job? He chuckled. Yes, but it's rare to see someone who actually cares about what they do. Most people just want to do the bare minimum, so they're not held responsible later. Eliza held back a smile. I'm not most people. He tilted his head slightly, watching her. I know. The way he said it sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. She quickly looked away, focusing back on the contract. So let's fix this, before I regret working this late. William grinned and leaned over the table. Let's do it. 2 hours later, Eliza and William were still buried in paperwork, surrounded by notes, half-empty coffee cups, and revised versions of the contract. Okay, what if we change this part here? Eliza suggested, scribbling something on the paper. This way the client keeps their protection against terminations, but we make it clear that the clause can only be triggered under specific conditions. William read the revision and smiled. That works. Eliza let out a sigh and slumped back in her chair. Finally, William laughed and leaned back beside her. "You did well." She looked at him, exhaustion weighing on her. "Thanks, but if you ever have another one of these bombs for me, before 2 in the morning, let me know in advance, okay?" He chuckled. "I'll try." For a moment, they sat in silence. The office was almost completely empty. The soft glow of the desk lamps was the only light left, and the quiet was oddly comfortable. That's when Eliza realized how close they were. William seemed to notice too. His gaze lingered on her more intense than usual. Eliza cleared her throat and stood up quickly. "Well, I guess we can submit this in the morning." William blinked a few times before smiling. "Yes, we can." She grabbed her bag, trying to ignore the strange feeling in the air. "All right then. See you tomorrow." William nodded. "See you tomorrow, Evans." Eliza walked out of the office, her heart beating a little faster than it should. That was strange, very strange. But part of her couldn't stop thinking about the way William had looked at her, and that scared her more than any poorly written contract ever could. The next morning, Eliza arrived at the office and found William already in the meeting room presenting the new version of the contract to the client. She slipped in quietly and sat beside him. "Mr. Carter," the client was carefully flipping through the pages. "So you reworked this clause to give me better protection?" Eliza nodded. "Exactly. This way, your company won't be vulnerable to misinterpretation and will maintain contractual security." The man studied the document for a few more seconds, then smiled. "This is exactly what I needed." William crossed his arms, looking satisfied. "So can we move forward with the signing?" The client picked up the pen and signed without hesitation. Eliza let out a quiet sigh of relief. Another problem solved. When the meeting was over, William pulled her aside. "You saved this contract, Evans," she smiled. "It was either that or let our client lose millions." He looked at her with an expression that suggested he wanted to say something more. "You really are different from anyone who's ever worked here." She raised an eyebrow. "Different in a good way or a bad way?" He smiled. "Very good." Eliza blinked a few times before looking away. "Well, I'm glad to hear that." William held her gaze for a moment longer, as if debating whether to say something else. But then he just smiled and left the room. Eliza stood there alone, trying to make sense of what was happening and why. For the first time since she started working there, she had no argument against what she was feeling. Lately, Eliza couldn't stop thinking about the way William looked at her. It was becoming a problem, not because it was uncomfortable, but because it was dangerous. She wasn't there to get distracted or get involved with the boss. She was there to prove her worth, to silence Edward and every other lawyer who still doubted her. But William was becoming a distraction that was hard to ignore. That morning, while grabbing coffee in the office kitchen, Aurora appeared beside her with a knowing smile. "So, you and William, what's going on?" Eliza nearly choked on her coffee. "What?" Aurora laughed. "Oh, come on. I saw the way he looked at you in the meeting yesterday, and I saw how fast you looked away." Eliza huffed, trying to ignore the warmth creeping up her face. "There's nothing going on." Aurora raised an eyebrow. "Right, so it's just my imagination telling me there's chemistry between you two?" Eliza took a sip of her coffee and sighed. "I don't know what you think you saw, but I can't afford to even consider this right now." Aurora crossed her arms. "Well, maybe you don't want to think about it, but I think William already is." Eliza rolled her eyes and walked away before Aurora could push her theory any further. But deep down she couldn't shake the question. What if Aurora was right? The day was hectic. Eliza was deep into another major case when William appeared by her desk. "Can you come to my office?" She looked up at him and nodded. "Of course." When she walked in, William closed the door behind her and leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "I got an anonymous complaint." Eliza frowned. "A complaint about what?" William handed her a document. Eliza took the paper and started reading. Her name was on it. Someone had sent a report claiming she wasn't qualified to be at the firm, alleging she was hired improperly and didn't meet company standards. She let out a humorless laugh. "Seriously? This is their latest move?" William watched her closely. "You know who did this?" Eliza took a deep breath. "Edward. It has to be him." William nodded. "I think so too, but don't worry. This won't go anywhere." Eliza crossed her arms. "Are you sure?" He smiled. "Do you really think I'd let that happen?" She held his gaze for a moment. He was really willing to protect her. "Thank you," she said, letting her guard down just a little. William stepped a little closer. "You don't have to thank me. I brought you here Because I saw your potential, and nothing, no one, is going to change that. Eliza felt her heartbeat quicken slightly. He was standing too close. She cleared her throat and looked away. Well, I should probably get back to work. William held back a smile. Yes, but first. She looked at him, suspicious. First what? He picked up a file from his desk and handed it to her. I need you to review this, but I want your honest opinion. Eliza took the papers and raised an eyebrow. You've already read it? Yes, but I want to know what you think. She looked at the document, then back at him. You really trust my judgment that much? William shrugged. So far you've been flawless. Eliza gripped the paper a little tighter. All right, I'll review it and get back to you. William nodded, but before she walked away, he said, Evans? She turned around. Yes? He smiled. You take everything so seriously. Just don't forget to breathe once in a while. She let out a small laugh. I'll try. And she left, not realizing she was still holding her breath. That afternoon, Eliza carefully analyzed the document. It was an important contract, but what surprised her was that William genuinely wanted her opinion. He wasn't just testing her. He wanted her to have a voice. That meant more than she was willing to admit. When she finally finished, she gathered her notes and walked to his office. William was alone, reading a report. Here it is, she said, handing him the papers. He took them and flipped through the pages, scanning her notes. You found a mistake here, he pointed out. Eliza nodded. Yes, a subtle contradiction in the penalty clause. William smiled. Well done. She crossed her arms. So did I pass the test? He looked up at her. This wasn't a test. I genuinely wanted your input. Eliza was silent for a moment. Thank you. William smiled. No, thank you. She realized he was looking at her again, that same way that made her heart beat too fast. Eliza cleared her throat and took a step back. Well, if you need anything else, I'll be at my desk. William nodded, but as soon as she left, he smiled to himself. Eliza felt like she was stepping into dangerous territory, but for the first time, she wasn't sure if she wanted to step out of it. Eliza was becoming more and more aware of William's presence. Something between them was shifting, even if neither of them had the courage to admit it. But the office wasn't a place for distractions, and William was too big of a distraction. That morning, she tried to focus on her work, tried to ignore his gaze whenever he walked past her desk, tried to ignore the tension that built up every time they were alone. But ignoring it was hard when William made sure to be around. Evans, his voice came from beside her. Eliza closed her eyes for a second before turning to him. What is it? He was holding a folder and a coffee, as if he knew she hadn't had a decent one yet. I need your help with a case. She took the coffee without hesitation. Is this a bribe? William smiled. Let's call it an incentive. Eliza scoffed, but grabbed the folder and started flipping through the documents. What's the case? William pulled up a chair and sat next to her. The client wants to terminate a contract without paying a penalty, but the supplier is claiming breach of contract. We need to find a middle ground so that no one gets hurt. Eliza skimmed through the document quickly. This isn't that complicated. There's a loophole here. If they argue the supplier delayed delivery, they can justify termination without a penalty. William smiled. You have an incredible talent for this. Eliza rolled her eyes. Don't praise me just yet. We need to see if this actually holds up in court. William watched her for a moment, as if evaluating something beyond the case. You're one of the most determined people I've ever met. Eliza looked away. And you're annoyingly observant. He laughed. I'm a lawyer. It's part of the job. She sighed and grabbed a pen. All right, let's get this done. But even as they worked, Eliza could feel the tension in the air, and she knew it was getting harder and harder to ignore. That night, Eliza stayed late at the office. So did William. You should go home, he said, leaning against Eliza, let out a sigh. So should you. He gave a small smirk. But I'm the boss, she laughed. Does that mean you get to ignore common sense? He stepped inside and sat across from her. It means I can work late without anyone questioning me. Eliza crossed her arms. Except me. William studied her for a moment before saying, except you. The silence that followed was too intense. She glanced down at the papers on her desk. I really need to finish this. Eliza. She froze. He rarely called her by her first name. William seemed to be struggling with his words. Before he could continue, his phone rang. He picked it up and his expression changed. I have to take this. Eliza nodded quickly. relieved by the interruption, but part of her knew that sooner or later that conversation would happen, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. The next day, the office was buzzing with activity. Aurora rushed to Eliza's desk, looking frantic. "You won't believe this." Eliza looked at her, exhausted. "What now?" "William has a business dinner tonight with an important client. And guess who he invited to join him?" Eliza blinked. "Who?" Aurora smiled. "You!" Eliza felt her stomach twist. "What?" "He said he wants you there. Said your presence is essential for the negotiation." Eliza took a deep breath. "This isn't a date. It's just work." Aurora laughed. Sure. Eliza ignored her and went back to work. But now her heart was beating way too fast, and she didn't know if it was because of the dinner or because for the first time, she couldn't see William as just her boss. Eliza spent the entire day trying to ignore the fact that she would be having dinner with William that night. She kept telling herself it was just work, but the way Aurora looked at her with that mischievous smile made it clear. Not everyone saw it that way. When the time finally came, Eliza went home to get ready. She chose a simple but elegant black dress and styled her hair in a neat way. She didn't want to look like she was trying too hard, but she also didn't want to be unprepared. When she arrived at the restaurant, William was already there. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, as always, but he looked more relaxed than he did in the office. "Evans," he said when he saw her walk in. She crossed her arms. "Smith." He smiled, clearly amused. "You can't relax for even a second, can you?" Eliza sighed and sat down at the table. "Not when I'm working with you." William chuckled and leaned in slightly. "That means I'm doing a good job." Before Eliza could respond, the client arrived. Mr. Harrington was an important businessman and was negotiating a major contract with the firm. The dinner started formally, with discussions about business and contracts. Eliza presented her arguments with confidence, making it clear she had studied every detail. Mr. Harrington seemed impressed. "You're very sharp, Miss Evans." Eliza smiled. "Thank you, I try my best." William looked at her with pride in his eyes. The dinner went smoothly. But at one point, when the client went to the restroom, Eliza noticed William watching her in a different way. "What?" she asked. He hesitated for a second before answering. "You surprise me more every day." Eliza looked away. "I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing." William gave a small smile. "Definitely a good thing." She took a deep breath, feeling like this conversation was heading into dangerous territory. "Don't mix things up, William." He raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly am I mixing up?" Eliza narrowed her eyes. "You know." William was silent for a moment before sighing. "You always have an answer for everything, don't you?" She smirked. "It's my job." The dinner ended, and the contract was practically sealed. Mr. Harrington left satisfied, leaving Eliza and William alone at the table. "Do you want me to drive you home?" he asked. Eliza hesitated. "No need. I can go on my own," he smiled. "I know you can, but that doesn't mean I can't offer." She looked at him for a moment before finally sighing. "All right." On the way home, the silence in the car was heavy until William finally spoke. "You feel it, don't you?" Eliza knew exactly what he was talking about, but she pretended not to understand. "Feel what?" He glanced at her before turning his eyes back to the road. "Whatever this is between us." She took a deep breath. "William, don't. Tell me I'm imagining things." Eliza stayed silent, because he wasn't. After a while, he just sighed. Got it. She wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. When they reached her place, Eliza got out of the car without saying anything. But before going inside, she looked at William one last time. He was still sitting there, watching her with something unreadable in his eyes, and Eliza knew that no matter how much she tried to avoid it, something between them had already changed forever. And the next day, nothing would be the same. Eliza woke up the next morning with a weight on her chest. The night before was still fresh in her mind, and no matter how much she tried to push the thoughts away, her conversation with William kept replaying. "You feel it, don't you?" Yes, she did, but admitting it was a point of no return. She didn't want to mix work with feelings. She couldn't. Ever since she started at that firm, she had to prove herself every single day, facing people like Edward and showing everyone that her position there wasn't a mistake. If William was involved, everything would get even more complicated. When she arrived at the office, she tried to act normal, but William was there too, and when their eyes met, it was clear he hadn't forgotten their conversation. He walked over, speaking quietly. "Can we talk?" Eliza hesitated. "I'm busy right now, then later." She sighed. William, he crossed his arms. You can keep pretending nothing is happening, but I won't. A chill ran down Eliza's spine. He never spoke like that. He always had a teasing remark, a smile on his face, a sharp comeback. But now he was serious. Before she could answer, Aurora rushed in. Eliza, we have a problem. She silently thanked the interruption. What is it? Edward. Eliza's whole body went on high alert. What did he do now? Aurora handed her a document. He filed a formal complaint against you with the board. He's claiming your hiring was irregular and that you don't have the necessary qualifications for the job. William grabbed the paper from Aurora's hand and skimmed through it. This is ridiculous. Eliza crossed her arms. He really wants to take me down. Aurora sighed. The problem is he got a meeting with Barnes to discuss it. Eliza frowned. When? In an hour. She closed her eyes for a second and took a deep breath. Then let's settle this once and for all. At the meeting with Barnes, Edward had a smug smile on his face. All I'm asking is for Evans's hiring to be reviewed. Barnes looked at Eliza. What do you have to say about this? Eliza crossed her arms. That this is nothing but a personal attack because I proved I'm better than him. Edward laughed. Oh sure, this has nothing to do with your questionable credentials. William stepped in. If the issue is credentials, we can provide Evans's academic records and her performance in the company. Eliza slid a folder across the table. Here it is. Barnes opened the documents and read. Eliza waited. Edward waited. William waited. Until Barnes finally closed the folder and looked at Edward. Your complaint is unfounded. Miss Evans was hired on merit and has demonstrated more than enough competence for her position. There's nothing more to discuss. Eliza smiled. Edward, on the other hand, was furious. This is absurd. Barnes gave him a cold stare. What's absurd is you wasting the board's time with a baseless complaint. If you want to stay in this office, I suggest you focus on your own work. Edward clenched his jaw, but he had no choice but to accept defeat. William looked at Eliza with a proud smile. I told you no one was going to take you down. She took a deep breath. Thank you. Barnes stood up. This meeting is over. Eliza gathered her documents and walked out with William by her side. When they reached the hallway, he gently grabbed her arm. Can we talk now? Eliza looked at him. William, he gave a small smile. You know, if you want to keep running from this, I can let it go. But I'm going to ask you one last time. She swallowed hard. Ask what? He took a step closer, and this time Eliza didn't back away. Do you feel this as much as I do? Eliza stayed silent, but at that moment, she saw everything that had happened in that office. Every time William had supported her, every glance they had exchanged, every time her heart had beaten faster than it should have. She could keep denying it, or she could finally accept it. She took a deep breath and looked at him. Yes. William smiled. Finally. Eliza rolled her eyes. You're impossible. He laughed, and before she could say anything else, he cupped her face and kissed her. It was as if everything around them disappeared. Eliza had no idea where this would lead, but for the first time, she was willing to find out. Eliza had never believed in fairy tales. She had always been used to fighting for everything on her own, protecting herself before anyone could hurt her. But there in William's arms, with his lips on hers, she realized she might have found something she never thought she would. He kissed her with an intensity that made her heart pound, as if all the tension between them was finally breaking free. When they pulled apart, William rested his forehead against hers, a satisfied smile on his lips. I've waited a long time for this. Eliza, still catching her breath, looked at him. And now that you have it? He held her face gently. Now I want more. She smiled, feeling lighter than ever. Then I guess we're on the same page. William chuckled and kissed her again, this time with no rush. The office could wait, the world could wait. At that moment, it was just the two of them. In the months that followed, their relationship evolved naturally. William respected Eliza's pace, never pressuring her, and little by little, she allowed herself to trust him. Of course, the entire office found out about their relationship. Aurora nearly exploded with joy when she heard they were finally together. I knew it! I knew this would happen, she exclaimed. This office was begging for a power couple. Eliza rolled her eyes but laughed. Edward, on the other hand, was furious. But after the humiliation he had suffered, he realized he no longer had the strength to fight them. Eliza and William worked together like an unbeatable team, and for the first time in a long time, Eliza felt truly happy. But William had a plan. He wanted more, much more. On a quiet weekend, William took Eliza out for a special dinner. Any particular occasion? She asked, suspiciously, as they walked into the upscale restaurant. I just wanted to spoil you a little, he replied with a mysterious smile. Eliza frowned. You never do anything without a reason, he laughed. Blame it on my lawyer instincts. During dinner, William seemed calmer than usual, but Eliza could sense something in the air. Then, when the waiter brought dessert, a small envelope was placed next to her plate. What's this? Eliza asked. William just smiled. With slight hesitation, Eliza opened the envelope and found a single sheet of paper inside. It was a legal document, but as she started reading, her heart raced. It was a marriage certificate with their names on it. She looked at William, stunned. What? He stood up, pulled a small box from his pocket, and got down on one knee. The entire restaurant went silent. Eliza Evans, he began, his eyes shining. From the day you walked into that elevator and argued with me, I knew you were different, but I didn't know you would completely change my life. Eliza felt tears welling up in her eyes. You taught me to see the world in a new way, to truly care, and you made me realize that nothing is worth it if I can't share it with you. He opened the small box, revealing a stunning ring. So now, in the most cliché yet sincere way possible, will you marry me? Eliza laughed, wiping her eyes. You really used a legal document to propose to me? William smiled. I thought it was fitting. She looked at him, the man who challenged her, who believed in her when no one else did, who became her partner both in and out of the office. And then, without hesitation, she answered, yes. William laughed and slid the ring onto her finger before kissing her as the restaurant erupted in applause. At that moment, Eliza knew that for the first time in her life, she was exactly where she was meant to be. A few months later, their wedding day arrived. The ceremony was held in a beautiful garden with white flowers decorating the space and a perfect blue sky above them. Eliza looked stunning in her white dress, holding a delicate bouquet as she walked down the aisle, her eyes fixed on William, who waited for her at the altar with a loving smile. Aurora, her maid of honor, tried to hold back tears. I never thought I'd see Eliza getting married, she whispered. Eliza laughed. Me neither. When she reached the altar, William gently took her hands. The officiant began the ceremony, but Eliza and William barely heard a word. They were lost in each other. When it was time for the vows, William took a deep breath before speaking. Eliza, I never imagined that an argument in an elevator would lead me to you. But now looking back, I see that it was the best thing that ever happened to me. You made me want to be a better man. And today, in front of everyone, I promise to keep challenging you, supporting you, and loving you for the rest of my life. Eliza held back tears and smiled before saying her vows. William, you are the most infuriating and charming person I have ever met. From the very beginning, you made me question everything, challenged me, and helped me grow. And now I can't imagine my life without you. So today, in front of everyone, I promise I will never argue with you in an elevator again. The guests laughed, and so did William. But I also promise that I will always stand by your side, no matter what. The officiant smiled. William Smith, do you take Eliza Evans as your wife? I do. Eliza Evans, do you take William Smith as your husband? She looked at him, her heart racing. I do. Then I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. William didn't wait. He pulled Eliza into a passionate kiss as the guests cheered, and in that moment, Eliza knew she had found her place, her home, her love.